There's a particular kind of emptiness, or even loneliness, that happens after sex. Not when the sex has been bad, and not when something went wrong necessarily, even when it was fine, or perhaps even good. And you still find yourself lying there, feeling like something essential didn't happen. You got what you came for, or you gave what you came to give, and somehow that wasn't actually the thing you needed after all. That specific feeling, that doesn't get talked about much, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Cindy Darnell, sex and relationship therapist, working with all kinds of people in all kinds of relationship configurations all over the world. And on this channel, we have the conversations many of us are having in our heads, but not out loud. Here, we talk about relationships, desire, intimacy, connection, friendships, emotions, grief, and what gets in the way. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. So let's get started. If you've ever felt empty after sex with someone that you care about, the first thing that I want you to understand is that the emptiness itself is meaningful. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you, or that the relationship is broken, or that you chose the wrong person even. It's more like a signal, pointing to a gap between what you were hoping sex would do and what it's actually able to do. And the gap tends to exist in a very specific place. Most of us carry an idea, usually unexamined, that sex can be a kind of emotional proof. Proof that someone wants us fully, or proof that we are loved in the particular way that we need to be loved, or proof that we are safe with this person, or that this person trusts us, or, and this one is subtle, proof that we are the kind of person that we want to be in this relationship. Sex can do many things, although it cannot reliably do any of those things. But that doesn't stop us from asking it to. So when it doesn't come through, when the physical experience is complete and the proof didn't arrive, we tend to attribute the failure to something that we did, or something that our partner did, or something fundamentally wrong with the connection. We are, after all, meaning-making beings. But what we rarely do is question the premise itself, that sex was never going to resolve what we were hoping it was going to resolve. One of the things I often see in my client work is that people often expect their emotional lives and their erotic lives to operate as if they were separate compartments, separate parts of their lives. They understand, at least conceptually, that they might have anxious attachment tendencies, that they might crave reassurance, or that conflict feels threatening, and that they need more closeness, perhaps, that their partner seems comfortable providing. But they tend to assume that none of that follows them into sex. But it does. Not always in obvious ways, though. Sometimes not in ways you'd recognize as attachment at all. But the same relational architecture that shapes how you handle conflict or closeness can also shape what you look for in sex, even if the emotions that motivate it are not about sex in their origin. Often these emotions are deeply tied to how you feel toward yourself, towards your sense of belonging, or how you struggle to embrace the parts of who you are that few people get to know or see. These feelings and experiences can inform what you're able to receive physically and psychically during sex, and what happens in your body before, during, and after sex, and whether you feel closer or more estranged from your partner once it's over. For example, when you're anxiously attached and you initiate sex from that anxious part, what you're often doing, not consciously, not as a strategy, is reaching for co-regulation. You're trying to close a gap that's opened up between you and your partner to restore a sense of being wanted, to quiet the particular anxiety that comes from not quite being sure where you stand with them, or even with the world at large. For some anxious people, sex feels like the fastest route to that. The problem is that co-regulation through physical intimacy is real, and it's great, but it's also temporary. and the underlying anxiety hasn't been addressed. So when the sex ends, so does the relief. And then what you're still left with is that original feeling, perhaps slightly soothed, but fundamentally unchanged, alongside a new, quieter kind of grief. The thing that you hoped would fix it didn't fix it. And for those who lean more avoidant, something structurally different is happening, though the outcome can look similar. Sex is often more accessible emotionally than direct conversations, for example, about vulnerability. It can feel like intimacy on terms that you can control. Physical closeness that doesn't necessarily require you to name what you feel or what you need. There's a genuine warmth available through sex for people with avoidant tendencies. It's just that the warmth has a ceiling, and once the sex is over, the ceiling reasserts itself, and there's often a withdrawal that looks cold from the outside, but it's really more like a retreat to safety. The intimacy that felt manageable during sex starts to feel like too much once the sex is done. So now I want to introduce a concept that I think is underused in these conversations. The great sexologist Jack Morin wrote about what he called the erotic equation, the idea that arousal and excitement tends to emerge from the combination of attraction and some element of psychological friction. Not necessarily dramatic or dark friction, but some kind of charge that comes from the tension between wanting and having, or from something that feels edgy or forbidden and complex. And what this means in practice is that each of us has a kind of erotic template, a lust map, if you will, that reflects not just what our bodies respond to physically, but what our psychological landscape has made erotically charged for us. And these maps are shaped by our histories, our wounds, our early experiences of wanting and being wanted. They are rarely sanitized or mutually agreed upon versions of sex that we might like to present to a partner. And for some of us, they don't always map directly onto what we are attracted to romantically, but that's for another video, which I'll make later. The lust map might include intensity, things that feel edgy and powerful or transgressive, or it might orient more towards tenderness and being seen and held and moved slowly. It might be highly visual or highly tactile or highly about narrative and imagination. For many people, it includes elements they feel some ambivalence or shame about. Not because those elements are harmful, but because they don't match who they think they're supposed to be or who they want to be perceived as by the person that they're with. And this is where things become particularly complicated in established relationships, because you're not just negotiating your lust map against your partners. You're negotiating it against attachment patterns, your self-concept, your fear of rejection, and your assumptions about what your partner will be able to hold without judging you, or without you spiraling and judging yourself. So let me offer two specific patterns that I see repeatedly in client explorations. The first is someone whose lust map wants something that their partner doesn't seem to want, or that they assume their partner would reject. So maybe they want more intensity, more edge, more power, or more of something that feels charged and alive. And their partner wants something more tender, more connecting, more emotionally straightforward. So they make a decision, usually not a conscious decision, to just go along, to participate in the sex that their partner wants and to foreclose on what they actually want. And over time, this looks like satisfaction. They're having sex and the relationship continues and no one is rejected. But what's accumulating underneath is a kind of low-grade resentment and a growing sense that they are not quite fully known. Their erotic self has been partitioned off, and if their attachment pattern also tends to lean anxious, if they're already hungry for reassurance, that partition has costs that compound. The sex they're having is confirming something for them, but it's not confirming what they needed confirmed. And then the second pattern, it's almost the reverse. Someone who doesn't get what they want erotically, whose partner is willing, even enthusiastic, but afterwards feels a shame response that can be quite overwhelming. They wanted the edge, and then they got it. And now they are flooded with something that looks like disgust or disconnection. And they pull away from their partner in a way that their partner experiences as sudden and bewildering. The sex itself, that was satisfying, but what followed wasn't. And this tends to happen when someone's lust map and their self-concept are in conflict, when what arouses them feels incompatible with who they understand themselves to be or how they want their partner to see them. And for people who have avoidant tendencies, who are already navigating a complicated relationship with vulnerability and closeness, the intimacy of having been seen wanting what they wanted can be genuinely destabilizing. Pulling back isn't coldness, it's protection. But to the partner on the other side, it can feel absolutely devastating. If this is resonating with you, please take a moment to pause and like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps this work reach the people who might need it. And if this is landing for you and you want to go further, there's a few ways that we can work together. My book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, is a good place to start, especially if you're a reader. And if you're looking for something more interpersonal, I offer coaching and counseling for individuals, couples, and polykills all over the world. If you're looking for a structured path and exercises you can move through in your own time, my online courses are built for exactly that. All of the links are below. So what I want to get into now is the particular kind of pain that comes from having a mismatch on both levels at once, an imbalance in emotional attachment and an imbalance in erotic styles. Because either one of those mismatches alone is workable. If you have different attachment patterns but similar erotic templates, sex can become a genuine place of repair, a shared language when the spoken language is strained. And if your attachment patterns are compatible, but your erotic maps are different, you have enough emotional trust to have difficult conversations about what each of you actually wants. But when both are mismatched, you lose both of those pathways simultaneously. So imagine a pairing where one person is anxiously attached and has a lust map that orients toward intensity, towards something that feels charged and even a little bit transgressive, and the other person is more avoidant and their lust map is more reserved. Not necessarily without desire, but desire that is more contained, more comfortable with distance. The anxiously attached person wants the sex to confirm closeness, and the avoidantly attached person experiences closeness as something that sex can briefly deliver before it becomes too much. And neither of their erotic maps is particularly well designed to meet the other person's emotional needs. The anxious person might push for more intensity, more presence, more of something, and the avoidant person experiences that as pressure and contracts. The avoidant person might lean more into the physical and detached end of sex, and the anxious person experiences that as confirmation that they are not really wanted. The content of the sex matters less than what each person is reaching for through it. And those two things are pointed in different directions. And then you add the erotic mismatch on top. Now you have someone who wants edge and someone who wants tenderness, or someone who wants to be met with full presence and someone who wants the freedom of a little distance. These aren't just preferences in the way that preferring coffee to tea is a preference. They are, in many cases, the signature of how desire was formed in each person, what made wanting feel safe, what made intimacy feel possible at all. To ask someone to simply prefer otherwise, it's just not a sustainable solution. But to leave the mismatch unnamed and unexamined is a slow erosion of the relationship. So I want to be careful here not to package this into something tidier than it is, because the truth is, that this is one of the more genuinely difficult terrains in relational and sexual work, and there's no reframe that makes the mismatch disappear. But there are some things worth considering and sitting with. The first is to actually look at what you are using sex for. Like, why are you even doing it? Not in a judgmental way, but in an honest way. We're gathering data. Is the sex functioning as your primary route to feeling wanted? Or is it functioning as a container for intimacy that feels safer than talking? Are you using it to close a relational gap without having to name the gap? These are not shameful purposes, they're very human purposes. But naming them is the beginning of having more choice about them. The second is to get curious about your lust map, not in order to explain it away or fix it or change it, but to know it. What is it actually oriented toward? And what do you want that you don't actually ask for? Or what do you ask for that you don't actually want? What happens in your body after sex that might be telling you something about whether the sex you're having is sex that actually satisfies you? And the third is perhaps the most uncomfortable. Whether the mismatch between you and your partner, erotic, emotional, or both, is something that can be held and navigated together, or whether it's something you have been holding separately in private and building a wall around. Because that wall doesn't protect the relationship. It just makes the emptiness more familiar. None of this is quick work, and sex is one of the most layered arenas of human experience. It carries our histories, our fears, our hungers, and our ideas about who we are and what we get to be. And the fact that it can leave you feeling empty, even when it seems like it went fine, is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is a sign, though, that something more complex is happening than the act itself can resolve. The invitation isn't to have better sex, as though the right technique or the right conversation about preferences will settle this. It won't. The invitation is to look more honestly at what you are bringing to sex and what you are hoping to take from it, and to start having that conversation eventually with the person you're in bed with. This stuff that I talk about isn't simple, and I don't think it should be. But I do think it's worth staying with. My book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, is linked below, and we go much more deeply into a lot of these ideas and more within it. It's a robust handbook that looks at desire and libido from psychological, emotional, physical, and erotic lenses. It's linked below. But if you'd prefer more personalized support, like coaching and counseling with me, that's also an option. The details are in the description, and you'll see it all on my website. If you're still here at the end of this, I really appreciate you being here. I love making these videos for you. Let me know in the comments below what resonated with you, and if you have any questions or any ideas about other videos that you'd like me to make. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.